Hello, everyone. How are you today? I hope everything is well. Can you hear me? Can you see the slides?
Hello? Yes, everything is okay.
Perfect. We're thinning out as it goes. But maybe more people will join. So this time we're going to talk a little bit more about some phenomena, just random phenomena in Akkadian and their parallels in other languages and what that may teach us, may be the question to keep in mind. So the first thing on the agenda is the noun patterns. Does anyone remember what noun patterns are? Just to make sure. Or just give me an example of a noun pattern. That will be cool as well. No, nothing? Okay. So noun patterns are, well, the templatic patterns of vowels and affixes in which we form nouns from roots. So these are the most common and simple ones in Akkadian from Streck's book from this year. So Pals is one of the most common ones. Pirs, Puls. Pals is not very common in Akkadian for derived nouns, but it is for primary nouns. So derived nouns are nouns that are derived from other nouns or from a root, while primary nouns like kalbu do not seem to derive from a certain root. Like you can derive a root out of the word kalb, but it's not a very productive root. So these are the three most common ones, the pals, pils, puls. They all also have a feminine variant, palsat, pirist, purust, or parast, pirsat, pulsat. And these in general we can find in almost all Semitic languages. And then there are these ones which have two vowels in their stem, so paras, paris, parus, piras. And these are much less common in Akkadian, or at least it's very hard to identify them because of the vowel syncope. So you can see that kalbu and kabru or danu are essentially the same in the same pattern. However, because of the construct state and because of the way these nouns inflect before possessive pronouns and so on, we can see that these actually have this second vowel of the stem. So these are harder to identify, but they also exist in general in Semitic. And then there are these common ones, paras, which is the infinitive in Akkadian and also in some other languages. I think we already spoke about this form, but it's not just the infinitive. For example, we have this word atan, which means she donkey. Paris is more of an adjectival noun pattern or adjective pattern, and parus as well. Piras is not very common in Akkadian for derived nouns, but it does occur in other Semitic languages, usually with some kind of infinitive meaning or maybe adjectival, depends. And
Qital in Arabic?
like, sorry, yeah.
Qital in Arabic?
Yeah, in Arabic it's almost exclusively for the infinitive, true, of the third form. So hiwar, qital, and so on. And Paris is much, much more rare. In general, as you can see, there are not, Paris is the only pattern in this list to have two high vowels. And these patterns are very rare in other Semitic languages or don't even exist. Any question about this scheme before we move on to see Paus? So there's a really good book about Semitic noun patterns from I think 2002, 2003, sorry, by Joshua Fox. And the next slides are from it. So Paus, once again, perhaps the most common and unmarked nominal pattern in Semitic in general, although it's not that common in Akkadian. So, as I said, it is often difficult to formally distinguish Paus from Paras or Paris or Parus patterns in Akkadian, and only in the predicative and the absolute and construct states. Absolute not as non-construct, but yeah, that's a little bit confusing. But like the predicative state and the feminine singular attributive adjective, those can give away the difference between the katl and katal or something like that. And some common nouns in Akkadian in this pattern: alpum, bull; alum, town; kasum, cup; marum, sun; temum, order; and warchum, moon. Any question regarding this?
You said it is rare in Akkadian?
It is rare mostly as a derived noun, as it says here, like nouns like bakru or batlu or kulu, but it is much more common as a primary noun pattern.
Okay.
Yeah, in
I
the
think
other Semitic
it's
languages, it's also very productive as a derived noun pattern. Okay. Then we have some examples from Arabic. In Arabic, it's really, really common. So there are also he also talks a lot about biforms between different patterns. So for example, here qatl and qatal. So wald walad, nahr nahar, sha'r sha'r, lagb lagab, yabs yabas, and so on. But there are many, many of these nouns in Arabic with the fa'al pattern, and it's also very, very common as the infinitive of the first form of the fa'ala. It's not the only, there are many, many different infinitives for that, but it is quite common. And there are also the ones that are primary, such as ard, ain, and thawr. Any question regarding this? Nothing. Okay. In Ge'ez, usually qatl remains qatl, so it's also quite common. So for example, um, kalb or I don't know. There in here there are these examples of these biforms that have or another vowel, which is also quite common, and some fa'al nouns in Gez also seem to have shifted to fi'l or fu'l or something like that, like fi'l nouns. So alf for thousand. Ra's is a little bit harder, but kirm for vineyard, or there's also kunf, for example, for wing, and so on. So it's a little bit more complicated in Ge'ez to reconstruct um, the earlier form of a noun pattern. Any question about this? It's either very boring or too difficult. So I'll try to speed through. Some past nouns in modern Hebrew, for example, you have many, many, many. So sheleg, snow; derech, way; zera, seed; shar, gate; bait, house; mavet, death. You can see that they have slightly different conjugations, but they're all historically from Pals. And you can see that from the inflection, dalki, zari, shalgi, but this inflection is not very productive in modern Hebrew.
I was about to say that I never had this noun pattern in Hebrew. I didn't know this derech is actually that it's connected with the Arabic
Yes,
form.
yes. Sheleg Thalj, yes, exactly.
Okay.
Mavet Maut, yes, they all come from this form. Historically, what happened is that there was a vowel inserted between the second and third consonant. Um, these result in penultimate stress forms in Hebrew, so that's a good way to identify them. But in that sense, also Pils and Pals have merged, as we will soon see. And they are also only distinguishable through their inflection. So like Dalki, as opposed to Degel, Digli. Okay. In Syriac, there are also a lot of these nouns. You can see Arya, Yamma, Garama, and so on. Pat'a, Harba, Asqa. And in Mehri, which is not that well understood, the vowel and pattern developments of modern South Arabian, you can see that they reconstruct ketel or fa'il from fal. So for example, you have bather, seed. Um, and for other words, you can have also without the second consonant. So kon for qarn or qarn, kaub for kalb, and F for 1,000 alp. So you know that this, I already said that this L is many times switches to wow in Mehri, or it's just deleted. The R is a little bit more rare to do that, but here there's both an R and an N in one root, which is not very nice in Semitic. And there are also nouns that he claims are Arabic loanwords like dice, kabs. Kabs is definitely not an Arabic loanword, but never mind that. Zait, tahr, ein, falg, and so on. Okay. The next one is Pils. So in Akkadian, it is more common as a derived noun pattern. So for example, Shipru, Wildu, Shirku, Biltu, Tsitu. I don't know if Tsitu is really a Pils noun, but never mind that. Any question about that? So in Arabic, fi'l is also pretty common, but not as common as fa'al. So for example, there's li'ib or kizb or fikhr, sifl, dhikr, dila, rijl, rijl, and tibn. But there are also these biforms with different patterns. In Arabic, many words have more than just one form, which can be quite confusing. Any question? Okay. In Ge'ez, the regular reflex is the one with the schwa. So birk for knee, tsirs for molar, izn for ear, from like it's either from izn or from uzn. So that's why he groups these together, because in Gez, both these e and u have turned into schwa. So we don't know. But obviously, this comes from birk probably, and this comes from uzn. Hudson, also from Hudson or something like that. Igr from Igr. Kinf, as I said before, probably from Kanf. And Zifr, nail. And also the adverbs for the numerals have this have this form? Okay. And in modern Hebrew, for example, degel, shevel, I forgot to turn over the R here, sorry. Reka, teisha, deshe, ir, chet. Once again, they have all of these different patterns of conjugation and inflection based upon which consonants were there, and some just random. But we can see that these were pierced nouns from their inflection. So degel, digli, diglecha, diglech, shever, shivri, and so on. Any question? Okay. In Syriac, it's usually qitla. So for example, regla from regl, qitla from qitl or something like that, murder. Hilma from hilm or something like that. And in Mehri, it is usually kaitel or kitel in the other languages. So Heiser, Baisit, Maihik. And this is, well, it's not usually called the infinitive, but this is called the verbal noun form. So it is very productive for derived nouns from the G stem. Any question before we move on to Purs? And then we finish this survey, which I don't know if you're enjoying. So Purs in Akkadian is maybe a little bit more abstract, maybe a little bit more infinitival or something. Rupshum, Shuplum, Murzum, Lumnum, and so forth. Um, in Arabic, this form is also quite common for broken plurals, which is nice. Not that common, maybe, but it does occur. And there are a lot of biforms, fu'l and fu'ul, of course, like ufq, ufuq, horizon, and so on. In Gez, it's exactly the same as the pirs or fi'l that we saw before. So izn, dib, gurn, and kul. It's nice that with the velar consonants, we can see this historic U through the labialization. So gurn, gwent, kul, and so on. But of course, it does not always work. Any question? Please. No one has spoken today except myself. And in modern Hebrew, some examples, choshech, darkness, kol, every, all. This is in all of the, I think, probably all of the West Semitic languages. This is the word for all, kul, or something like that. In Akkadian, it's a little bit different. It's like kalamu or kala or something like that, I think. Bochan, quiz, a modern word. Motek, honey, or something like that. Doar, mail. Gova, height. Sova, satiation. So Sova is or Gova are good examples for the similarity between the meaning of this pattern in Hebrew and in Akkadian, for example. So like, or also Rochav, width, and so on. So something either abstract or infinitive of adjectival or something like that. Any question? Fine. And in Syriac, we can see this also quite boring and regular, just ruhka, ruhka, urka, ukhla, qudhsha, ur'a, ushna, and so forth. So quite regular. And also the fractions, but this is probably in Arabic. Loan word like in Arabic, also thulth, ruba, and so on. Okay, the other patterns that are quite common, but we won't talk about them as much, first of all, because you're not that interested, I guess, and because it's a little bit more complicated, are these paras, paris, parus. But in general, I think I've given a picture of the nominal patterns in these languages. Now we can discuss maybe a little bit about the end stem, which is a little bit special and interesting, or at least I think so, in the connection
Can
between.
I ask another question?
Yes, of course.
Um, I was wondering the comparing Hebrew and Arabic. In Hebrew we have Melech, but in Arabic we have Malik with a short e. So where does this come from? So are they like directly derived, or is it some Aramaic whatever in between step? So where does the I come from, or
So
the E
I do
come from?
think this word is inherited from like Proto-West Semitic or something like that. It's a very good question why Arabic has Malik, but there are these certain cases in which we see some of the languages, many times Arabic, but not only, insert a vowel between the second and third radicals. So for example, we saw all these biforms in Arabic like ufq and ufuq, or udn and udun. So I guess this
But is there some idea like because Arabic doesn't have the problem with the consonant clusters, whereas Hebrew like very systematically tries to avoid it. So is there some idea to say, okay, in these cases Arabic doesn't have a problem, in these cases they rather want to avoid them? So is there?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I don't think there has been a suggestion as to where these happen or not, but Arabic lexicography is very, 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 very complicated. So
Yeah.
Arabic is like an ocean of different languages and dialects from the first time it was attested. So many of these forms or biforms can be dialectal biforms, and it can also be other things that we don't know. Like, I'm sorry, unfortunately, I don't
Because like in biblical Aramaic you would usually go if the form looks so one of the forms is then a certain Hebrew basically influence or Hebrewisms, and the other is the kind of traditional Arabic form. So there is, or at least you usually would say, okay, this is influenced from Hebrew, or what the Masoretes simply said. Yeah,
Yes, the problem is that Arabic has this amazing variety of
yeah, I
morphological
understand.
and lexical features. Sometimes none of the alternatives are shared by any other language, and then it is really hard to say this is from this kind of influence. Sometimes the lexicographers, the grammarians and so forth, say this feature is Aramaic, or they don't say Aramaic, they say Syriani or something like that,
Yeah.
or sometimes they say this feature is ajam, this feature is foreign, but it's really hard to determine exactly where any of these come from. And Malik is not the only noun in Arabic that has this phenomenon. So you're right to say that Hebrew systematically avoids these consonant clusters. In Arabic, it's a little bit more complicated. So there are a lot of these, and we saw like a list of
Yeah.
these biforms between fi'l and fi'al, فعل 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 فعيل and so forth. Any other question?
Thanks.
Great. Nothing. Okay. So we can carry on to talk about the end stem. There are also the weird other stuff in Akkadian, but maybe we won't talk about them now. So, never mind. So the end stem, we have this paradigm in Akkadian, right? Does everyone remember? The end stem is like something between reflexive and passive, I guess, or middle and passive. So the preterite is aparis, taparis, taparsi, iparis, taparis in Assyrian, niparis, taparsa, iparsu, iparsa. So the form is basically based on the something like personal prefix, probably an N that was here, and then that's why it's called the end stem. And then the fa'il pattern. Any questions regarding this or this structure? because it's a little bit different, I guess, from the G stem or the D stem or the Shin stem. Does anyone know of another Semitic language that has an N stem? No?
I think Ugaritic does.
Yes, actually they all do. That was a trick question. They all do except Aramaic, pretty much. But it's a little bit more complicated, so that's what I am going to try and say today. So, for example, in Biblical Hebrew, this is the prefix conjugation, so the future or something like that, of the N stem from a root malat. It means to escape or something like that, or to be saved. So emmalet or emmolet, timmolet, timmolti, immolet, timmolet, nimmolet, timmoltu, timmoletna, immoltu, timmoletna. What do you think about the similarities and differences between these forms and the ones in Akkadian?
It's the same vowel pattern, right?
Exactly. Not only is it the same vowel pattern, you're right, it is the same vowel pattern. What else is similar?
The consonant pattern.
Yeah. You're right. I mean that there wasn't an assimilated N here, like the lengthened first consonant, exactly the same. And there's even the same syncope, like tiparsu or taparsu, taparsa, iparsu, or something like that. Exact same syncope, but that might be coincidental. But yeah, as Chris said, this is the exact same vowel pattern. So once again, if we ignore the personal prefix vowel, which differs between the different persons in Akkadian, if we look just at the iparis, for example, and we compare it to imolet, this is exactly what we would expect to find. So the E was lengthened to E, and the A was lengthened and then rounded to O or something like that. And this is very regular in the development of Biblical Hebrew. Okay. And then we have the one in Arabic, the short prefix conjugation, what we call the majzoom in Arabic. So once again, ansahib, tansahib, tansahibi, yansahib, tansahib, nansahib, tansahibu, tansahibna, yansahibu, yansahibna. Any remark on this? Is there anything different between Arabic and Akkadian here? This means to retreat in Arabic, I think, something like that.
There's no assimilation and there's no syncopsis.
Yes, true. No syncope.
But the vowel pattern is the same.
Yes, exactly. Very, very right. So no assimilation of the N, which is nice, and no syncope. And this, I think, makes it likely or feels like it makes sense to
Sorry,
say that Arabic.
syncope is to double the letter?
No, syncope is the vowel deletion. So in both Akkadian and Hebrew, there are regular rules of vowel deletion and they are the ones that create, instead of taparisa, it's taparsa. Instead, in Hebrew, of timaletu, it's timaltu. And in Arabic, you don't have that. You have tansahibu, not tansahbu.
Okay.
And you don't assimilate the N. And this kind of seems like it makes sense for this to be the original conjugation, I think. But I don't know. Okay, so far, all simple and beautiful and similar. Now we have the durative in Akkadian. So the durative in Akkadian of the N stem can have one of two forms, which is either aparris or aparras. And apparently it depends on the vowel class of the verb in the G stem. So the EE vowel class, I think, has aparris, and all the other vowel classes have aparras. So that's weird. Akkadian is the only, as far as I know, Semitic language to have a vowel class outside the G stem or the G stems. And once again, as we saw before in the D and Shina, I said that the languages that have this ipus iparras distinction use either a ablaut or lengthening of the second radical of the root to distinguish these forms. Here, either one is used. So in aparis, only the gemination of the second radical. And in the aparras, both the gemination and the ablaut. Is this clear? Everything clear?
So the gemination of Aparisu in the Malet in Hebrew is actually just to put something instead of the an.
No. Oh, you mean the gemination of the first consonant?
Yeah.
It is considered to be an assimilation of the n or compensatory lengthening. Either one of like you can describe it as either. But yes, you're right. Pretty much it's because of the n. It's instead of the n. And you can see this n in other forms, which I haven't shown, like in Akkadian, in the infinitive, I think napusu or something like that, and the stative and verbal adjective, and in Hebrew in the past and participle, also mifal. Any other question? Everything clear? Okay, so once again, I will ask, do we have such a weird iparis, iparas, or iparis form in other Semitic languages? If you had to guess, what would you guess?
It is.
Yes, very good. Now you have to guess which. Never mind. Okay. So the other thing that is interesting in the end stem in Akkadian is that it can house quadriliteral or tetraradical roots that have 4 radicals instead of 3. In Akkadian, you can only inflect these roots in the end stem and in the shin stem, and no other stem, if I remember correctly. So this is the preterite of the end stem in the Akkadian for the quadriliterals. So for example, nabalkutu, abbalkit, tabbalkit, tabbalkiti, ibbalkit, tabbalkit. So this is pretty much the same as the iparis, except that here there's one more consonant or one more mora, which affects maybe the stress, it affects the syncope. Like there's no syncope here because it's impossible, the tabalkiti, and so on. But essentially it is exactly the same. Now, in Ge'ez, there is no end stem, nor is there one in modern South Arabian. But there are remnants of the end stem in both of these language groups, Ethio-Semitic and modern South Arabian, which are traditionally analyzed as quanqui literal roots or pentaradical roots that have n as their first consonant. So for example, there would be this root, this word, something like angargara, and it kind of looks like there's an a prefix, and then the root is nun gimel reish. But in fact, diachronically, we reconstruct this as a remnant of an end stem with the root gara gara, or something like that. And the inflection of the jussive is angargir, tangargir, tangargiri, yangargir, tangargir, nangargir, tangargiru, tangargira, yangargiru. This should be yangargira. I'm so sorry. So, what do you think about this form? Is it similar to Akkadian or not? So Akkadian had Abbalkit, Tabbalkit, Tabbalkiti.
Identical, actually.
Sorry?
Identical to the Akkadian.
Yes, yes, it is completely identical. I agree. I absolutely agree. It is exactly the same thing, except for the personal prefix vowel. That's a little bit weird. It's also weird that it has a long a, which kind of looks like the causative here, but it is really, really similar. And it's not a causative verb, which also makes it suspicious to have an N prefix. I hope that was clear. Here is the inflection of the N stem, or a remnant of the N stem in Jibali for quadriliterals. Now, in West Semitic, in Central Semitic, there are no quadriliterals in the N stem at all. There is an N stem, but it's completely regular and it has no quadriliterals in it. In modern South Arabian and Ethio-Semitic, the N stem has only remnants, and some of them are also in the quadriliterals. So, for example, to fall, lengerdesh, lengerdesh, lengirdesh, yengerdesh, lengerdesh, lengerdeso, yengerdeso, lengerdeso, nengerdesh.
I'm still seeing the end stem of jazz. Jazz.
Oh, really? That is so weird. Thank you for saying. Let's try and solve this. Yeah. Now can you see it? Perfect.
Yes.
So this is the subjunctive inflection of a remnant of the N stem in Jibali from the root garadasha, which means to fall. So that I fall, or let me fall, lengardish, let you masculine singular fall, lengardish, let you feminine singular fall, lengirdish, let him fall, ingardish, let her fall, lengardish. Let both of us or both of you fall. Lengerdesho. Let both of them fall. Masculine. Yengerdesho. Let both of them fall. Feminine. Lengerdesho. Let us fall. Nengerdes. Let you masculine plural fall. Lengordes. You feminine plural. Lengerdesen. You masculine. They masculine. Lengordes. They feminine. Lengerdesen. What do you think about these forms? What is different and what is